Hello, and welcome to HIV Interview in Conversation with me, your host, Charity Kase. This series aims to provide a platform for an honest conversation about living with HIV and to dismantle stigma and discrimination that still exists today. Every 4 minutes, 3 young women become infected with HIV, and yet young women around the world continue to lack adequate health services and consistently experience socio-cultural, economic, and political inequalities. Today, I'm talking to Silvia and Doreen on this important topic. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charity.
So, first of all, I'd like to ask you, Silvia, why did you decide to take part in this very wonderful series?
Thank you, Charity. For me, as a woman living with HIV, I know that one of the greatest burdens that we face is still the stigma that surrounds HIV, the prejudice, the kind of myths, like the HIV is something that only affects a certain kind of people. So I want to be involved because I want to show the world that HIV can affect anyone. You know, I don't think I look particularly different. And yes, and I think the most powerful tool that we have as people living with HIV is to be open and to have conversations and let the world know that we are just like anybody else.
I totally agree. I was talking to the fabulous Donald yesterday about how representation in the media is very slim and only showcases one certain type of person living with HIV, and that also adds to the prejudices and the stigmas that you face every single day. And Doreen, what would you say about the same question? Why did you decide to take part in this series?
So I decided to take part in this series because it's humanizing the HIV virus. It's basically giving a face behind a virus that a lot of people tend to shy away from. People don't talk about their status openly, and it's still a hugely stigmatized health condition, as Silvia has said. And for women living with HIV, the burden of living with HIV still lies on us, because half of the people living with HIV who are women are more than men. So you find that if we don't have a normal conversation about HIV, we don't normalize the HIV conversation, then it means that when we are basically not doing anything to fight HIV 40 years later. So I'm basically in this conversation to humanize the HIV virus and give meaning to a normal HIV conversation by showing that people who live with HIV are not just numbers, but they're real life human beings.
100%. And we're real life human beings living happy and healthy lives. And that is a really important thing. And that is why we have to show our faces. So I want to personally thank you both for being involved, because, without people like you, we wouldn't be fighting this cause as strongly as we are doing. And, you're joining us from around the world for these conversations. So let's pat ourselves on the back for that. My next question for both of you is, I'm going to ask you, Doreen, what is your experience of being a woman living with HIV in the world today?
So my experience being a woman living with HIV in today's world is basically an experience where people look at you from a point of how many people have been infected with HIV. They want you to get married, because I am still unmarried. So people want you to get married, and they feel like your single status is because you are HIV positive. And I, on my social media, because I do a lot of social media advocacy, I see comments telling me, just find a positive man like you to marry you, because that is how it's supposed to be. So as a woman living with HIV, the burden of HIV disclosure falls on me. The burden of ensuring that if I want a child who is HIV negative, that burden lies on me as well. Yes. The burden of getting a partner lies on me as well, because it's all about, she's living with HIV. She cannot find someone who either has HIV or does not have HIV. So the older I grow, the more I realize that people still don't look at HIV from a perspective where it is a human being disease. They look at it from a point where every engagement I have had, my HIV status has been sexualized. Like, You speak you're HIV positive, the next thing they want to ask is, have you infected anyone with your HIV status? So it's not just a normal health condition anymore. It's now something that you have to stand out and tell people that my role is not to infect people. My role is to live positively with this health condition. But unfortunately, I feel like we still have a very long journey to go as women living with HIV, who our HIV status has to be normalized, because most of the time you find we are the ones struggling. You have to be able to protect not only yourself, but also your partner. And that really is heavy. It's a heavy burden on us.
And like you say, and your plans for parenthood, like that's something that I've never had to consider as a cis male. And, you know, I think, like I said earlier on, the representation of no women in the media, especially over here, I mean, talking openly about their HIV status really does have an impact on your life. That increases ignorance around the virus. And like you say, when people are putting pressure on you to find a partner, it only points the finger at the virus being the reason, because of such social stigma and stereotypes. So yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what you both go through on a daily basis living with this virus as a woman without seeing any representation in the media at all. And that is why it's so important that you guys are that representation. So Silvia, what has changed for women living with HIV since the start of the epidemic?
Well, I mean, I think for women living with HIV, like for everybody living with HIV, the most important thing that has happened has been the advent of antiretroviral therapy, and the fact that, you know, when we are on treatment, not only we can live long and healthy lives, but it also means that we can have babies who are HIV negative, and as well, we do not transmit HIV to our partners. There is something that, you know, in the world is called undetectable equals untransmittable, which means that when I take the treatment, which I take for my health because it makes me stay well, it also means that it controls the virus, it makes the virus undetectable. And when the virus is undetectable, I cannot pass it to anybody else. So I think that has really revolutionized, HIV, because in the late 80s, early 90s, 40 years ago, HIV not only was, a life-threatening disease, the kind of illness that you would have was like horrible, really like soul-destroying, because your immune system would shut down and you would take, all kind of infections, and people, it was really, really horrible. We lost so many people in the, and we continue to losing people, because even now almost 1 million people die every year because they don't have access to life-saving treatment. So I always like to talk about this because, I know this is a World AIDS Day special. So it is important to remember that
100%.
40 million people have died of AIDS in the past 40 years, and we continue losing people, every year. So it's not over. And actually, this new pandemic of COVID and has kind of even exacerbated some of the drivers that were already driving the, HIV, especially inequalities. So yes, but, and as well, I think for women, there is, I could speak about women until tomorrow, but I think we need to consider.
Me too. I'm a feminist.
As women, we have very important roles in our communities, because of the role that we play in our family, but also our bodies change a lot, from puberty, from when you become, fertile and you have to have children, and then pregnancy, breastfeeding, all of that. And then once you think it's all over, come the menopause. I wish somebody told me about it, because it was like we are so unprepared, and as always, everything that is about women's body, for some reason in our society, has always been shrouded in mystery. And I think it's really, really important to talk about it, not just HIV, but to talk about our lives as women in all its aspects, including the menopause.
Well, I think society has a massive, massive misogyny problem. All around the world, in so many different ways, and HIV is just one of those ways. representation in media is outbalanced anyway from men to women. So if we look at that and then we put that in the perspective of HIV, when there's only a few people that are in this pool of representatives, added with misogyny, it's just, you know, it puts us in the situation we're in today. And you know, over here, I don't know about other places in the world, but over here in the UK, misogyny isn't a hate crime, you know, and to me that's a massive problem, and to me that just plays into the stereotypes and the stigmas around HIV. Do you think social media helps or hinders stigma, Doreen?
Well, I think my answer will be a yes and a no. Reason being, yes, it does help when it comes to reducing stigma, in that it has made people open up about their stories, it has made the conversation going, and it has actually given the general population the aspect that HIV is not just about people living with HIV, it's also about people who do not have HIV and how to prevent themselves. So basically, it has kept the conversation going. Even in times like last year when we had, when COVID first started and people living with HIV were panicking, and they were named among the people who will be mostly affected by COVID-19. And some of them sought solace in each other by knowing that, yes, we cannot be able to meet physically, but we can support each other psychosocially. And that actually really helped. Yeah. But sometimes it goes the wrong way, because there are people in countries that are yet to reach. There are countries that are actually already at a place where you can comfortably speak about HIV. There are countries that, however, are at a place where you cannot speak about your HIV status. And the moment you open up, you are stigmatized. And of course, most people open up the very first time on social media, but they don't get the same exact treatment. And some people, you know, with social media, we have a lot of clout chasing. Some people say you're using your status to chase clout or to get more traction towards yourself. So some people really miss the whole point of what you are doing in advocating for matters HIV. So sometimes I recently was called a HIV-infested harlot. So wow. Sometimes it's a good day, sometimes it's a bad day.
Yes, I mean, I completely agree in every way. I mean, without social media, I probably wouldn't have been so open with my status. And I wouldn't have so many people who, you know, I relate to and who are now part of invited me into a community, you know. So I think that the freedom that people feel like they are allowed on social media to just be brutal is really challenging. But you're so right.
Sometimes, so for example, like I was born with HIV. So when I say that I was born with HIV, I get the pity and the nicer comments. Yeah. But another person who was not born with HIV might not receive the same exact pity, because sometimes people are like, you were innocent. You know, when you tell somebody you were innocent because you got HIV, nobody is guilty. It's not a crime. Yeah. You know?
We don't go pointing fingers and blaming when somebody gets diagnosed with any other illness at all. You know? So, you know, I mean, I'm not even going to bring up another illness because it's just not right to do it, but it doesn't happen. So, you know, it's these statements, these titles, these you know, these images, these adverts that were out around the epidemic and around the crisis, that have led people to still believe these things today. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree. So Silvia, do you often find people use the wrong terms or tone of language when they're talking about HIV online on social media?
One of my favorite pet hates in terms of words. There's a lot of words. I think language is so important. You know, the words that we use, like you said, clean or dirty, or, you know, they really define the word that we have and what is valuable and what is not. For me, the word I really hate is HIV infected, because the word infected is, if you look in the dictionary, is a horrible, you know, it means that you are contaminated, that you are polluted, that you are tainted, that there is something, you know, and there is something like really like you shouldn't even be touched, that you're like a health hazard. I remember, when I was diagnosed, all those ideas came, I'm infected, I cannot even hear the word. Every time I hear, I kind of, I feel horrible. But there are so many words. Sometimes they use this phrase for if you have a partner, if I'm HIV positive and my partner is HIV negative, they say that we are a discordant couple. And I feel like discordant is like, the relationships are hard enough. It's like you're doomed if you're discordant. Well, I can go on and on. Another my pet hate is disclosure. You have to disclose your HIV status. And it's like, disclosure is something for very negative. It's like a criminal disclosure or something like. And you can see how the whole language is like seeping in and making meaning and making HIV this really horrible thing that that is a real label. Well, HIV is a virus, it's a piece of RNA, it's not a moral issue. Some people get it, some people don't, but the language that we use around it can really, define how we respond to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I thought of lots of language, but disclosure is something that I'd never considered. And you're so right. Like these slightly negative terms are scattered throughout the terminology, and yeah, it's all adding to this negative stereotype of it being a big, scary, fearful thing. And now my final question for the both of you today is: what do you think the future looks like for young women living with HIV today? I'll ask you first, Doreen.
So for me, I feel the future looks very bright because we have come from a point where there was no treatment to now where there is treatment, to now where when you're undetectable, you cannot be able to transmit HIV to your partner. So for me, I feel for both women not living with HIV and for women living with HIV, there is hope. There is encouragement. There is basically a very bright future for us. And we actually have to change the narrative. I feel like it is our responsibility to change the narrative about HIV from being a deadly virus to being a health condition where you get to live with it every day. It does not limit you from achieving your dreams. It does not take away the amazing person that you are. You're still the amazing woman you were before you got tested and after you get tested. So it doesn't mean that you can't be anything you wanted to be. It means that you still continue being the awesome person you are, whether you're HIV positive or not. But I feel that women, both living with HIV and not living with HIV, can change the narrative about positive living with HIV and give it a different view and a different face.
And I think obviously that's the goal, isn't it? That's the goal, to change the view, to change the place that we're at right now.
I feel like sometimes we come from a place where we have a lot of privilege, where we have the information and we have the access, but there are women who literally don't have the access, they don't have the information, they don't know what to do once they are sexually abused. They don't know that they should go for PEP and they don't know that they should get tested. So with such kind of things, we need to make information very easy. Yeah. First of all, descientize. I don't know, that is not an English word, but descientize.
I'll take it.
Descientize the whole HIV prevention information package, so that every woman is able to know that I can go here and this is the forum to take, this is the prevention method to take, so that they don't get lost and they don't feel like they are not deserving of the HIV prevention method that 100%, was available to them.
100%. Yeah. Like you say, it is available to everybody, but I think lots of people don't realize that.
Exactly.
So it's about putting this information out in a way that is understandable and educating the masses. And so I'm going to ask you the same thing, Silvia. What do you think the future looks like for young women living with HIV today?
Well, as Doreen just said, now we are in an incredible time. We do have the tools to end the HIV epidemic, to end AIDS. However, I think that the kind of structural change that is needed to arrive where we need to arrive. It entails a lot of hard work, and especially entails a real change of mentality. And I think what is important is the power to be understand that us as a community, us as women living with HIV, have to be part of the solution. We have to be part of policy making. We have to be part of research. We have to be.
You have to be listened to.
Yeah, we have to be listened to. So that's the number one, And us, especially as women, that have lived with the virus, we are the best place to understand how to deliver prevention. We are the best place to tell you how health services need to be delivered. Meaningfully involve us. That's the first step. And then I would say address economics, address education, and address gender-based violence, because those are the biggest obstacles globally, and especially in the global south, for women to be healthy, for women to be safe, for women to be able to live the lives that they are entitled to live.
Well, thank you very much. I think they are some amazing points. It has been so lovely chatting to both of you today. You're both very impressive and amazing people. So it's been an absolute honor to take some of your time today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Charity. You were totally amazing.
Oh, thank you, my love. I hope to see you very, very soon, both of you. I'm sure we'll be doing something very similar very soon as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Definitely. Well, thank you all for watching. This has been HIV in View in Conversation with me, your host, Charity Kase. Thank you to Doreen and Silvia for joining us today. And my call of action to all of you, yet again, is join us by changing the way the world views HIV. I'll see you next time.